There's things that are going on now this season that are as embarrassing as anything that's gone on during his tenure, including, the McAdoo, Shermer, Joe Judge tenures. And, he's really got to believe in Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll now to allow this to happen. And if they got together and said, listen, we know the players aren't going to tank, but if we could, put some guys out there that really stink and we get the number 1 overall pick, I'm going to give you guys the opportunity to draft that guy and develop that guy. That's one thing. But this is why it's a catch-22, because if you're Brian Daboll, you're like, all right, we want to win a couple of games here to look like the wheels aren't coming off. But at the same time, if we're staying, I certainly want to have the number 1 overall pick. But the Saquon stuff, how embarrassing that has been. Now the plane, not winning a game at home. The Malik Neighbors quotes. It just gets...
The 100th season.
Yeah, all the off-season Hard Knock stuff. It just gets worse and worse and worse by the minute. And it's just a really, really hard thing to survive. But if he believes in them, man, he's going to have to stick by it. I'd love to just have a private conversation with him to understand what he's thinking.
You watch their offense, and their offense is at this point, it's unwatchable.
Yeah.
And they did get something going a little bit there in the fourth quarter, but then Derek Carr was helping them out too as well, because the Saints couldn't do anything against the Giant defense, really. But It's going to be a hard one. They go 2-15. They get the number 1 overall pick. They don't win a game at home. It's their 100th season. I don't care if they're competitive or not.
Yeah.
It's almost I feel like those guys are dead men walking, and I hate to say that because I don't want to talk about a man's job. I appreciate what they're doing. I appreciate the difficulty of what they're going through right now.
Yeah.
And trying to win games. I also felt like watching the game, especially in the first half, that they're not really trying to win this game. They got a lot of guys out.
I know.
I don't necessarily know that they'll never admit it, nor would I expect them to admit it. But there are things you can do.
Well, the fact that Malik Neighbors played when he was questionable was sort of, to me, I was like, man, they could have very easily sat him. But then again, if he wanted to play the way that he's candid about his thoughts, he probably would have brought something up like, I wanted to play and they told me not to, and then it would have been a disaster for the Giants having to explain that one away. But I don't know. I like the fact that Malik Neighbors says what he wants to say, and he's embracing his personality, but it's becoming it's funny to us because we're not Giants fans. And for him to say, I didn't pay for the plane, I had a laugh at that. I don't think Giants fans are having a laugh at that.
It's funny to me as a radio talk show host that a guy would say something like that and you could laugh at it. But as a teammate and in the locker room, to have a kid who is still a kid and still in his rookie season, and I guess you could say he's got the ability to say whatever he wants because he's a part of the team all of a sudden, but there is a respect, at least there used to be. I don't know, I'm not in the locker room anymore, but there used to be a hefty respect that you had for the game, that you had for the older players, and that you had for your coaching staff and your ownership.
Yeah.
All of that stuff would line up. I may not have been happy when I was drafted by the Bengals, but I'll tell you one thing, when Paul Brown walks in the room, you have a healthy respect for that man because of everything that he accomplished in the sport. And you can say whatever you want about the Giants and their current state over the last 10 years, but that team has won Super Bowls. That team has got numerous Super Bowls over there, especially under this ownership. And, this team did something that nobody had ever done before, and that was beat an undefeated team in a freaking Super Bowl.
Right.
And, you can't lose sight of that. And maybe this young man doesn't even think about that, doesn't even realize that. I don't even know if he even knows about it. I would like to think that when you do get drafted, the first thing you do is you try to immerse yourself into who the Giants are or what team you're drafted by is. And then you learn about that franchise, and then you try to bring out the best in the history of that franchise. I don't necessarily know that Malik Neighbors is capable of doing that.
Yeah, at this point, he is doing everything that Brian Daboll expected him to do when he had the conversation with him in the offseason Hard Knocks about complaining and all of that. And I know he said he liked that, and he wants a guy who doesn't like to lose. But, it's every single game there's something. Him chewing the gum, talking about, I'm not the guy calling the plays. It ain't the quarterback. I didn't pay for the plane. I mean, it's just like it's like enough already. I mean, you're now throwing the match on the dry pile of leaves. You don't need to do that.
It's just a respect factor that I just don't know if it's even there anymore. I mean, I think there are certain players in all the leagues, in all the sports, maybe not hockey as much, but I think I kind of feel like there's an entitlement that's attached to a younger, high-drafted player.
Right.
And that player feels like he has to say something. And I don't know if Malik even realizes what he's saying. I know he does, but I don't necessarily know that he would agree with it or people of that generation would agree with the lack of respect. And it puts the coach in a really bad situation. It puts ownership in a really funky situation. And they knew what they were getting because of what he told those guys at their combine meetings. And when they did get a chance to meet him before the draft, they knew what they were getting.
Do you think them getting the number 1 overall pick helps or hurts the chance of Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen staying? Now, that means they're 2-15, but at the same time, it's like, all right, Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, they're going to take this guy. He's going to Brian Daboll's going to have his chance to have his hands on a young quarterback that's got talent. That's why we brought him here. I mean, do you think that them and their draft position has anything to do with the tenure of those two guys?
I think that when the owner sees the stadium 60% filled and sponsorships and the business side of the building going, basically, out of business.
Yeah.
That he has to do something. And 2-15 and 0-9 at home is not good in your 100th season. I don't know how you can keep those guys around under those circumstances. I really don't. As much as I like them and as much as I do believe that Brian Daboll is a very good coach and knows the business and knows the game, I think he's been hamstrung with the quarterback position. I think they've had some bad draft choices. There is a good group of guys here that I think ultimately with the right coach and right GM and the right quarterback could actually do something and become competitive. I just don't necessarily see that if it's 2-15 and 0-9 at home.
Think Ben Johnson would come here to coach the Giants, not the Jets?
If it were me and I were Ben Johnson, I'd be looking at other places.
Okay. All you need to say. All right, let's go to...
I feel like the Giant fan at 2-15 and 0-9 at home, 100th season, bring back Belichick. I'm getting that feel, even though he's talking North Carolina for some reason about maybe setting up his son Steve as the heir apparent.
Yeah.
If he leaves there. I don't know. I just kind of feel like if you want to get the Giant fan back on board, you're going to have to bring somebody in here that's got lineage or linkage to maybe some of the past successes that you've had here.
They're going to have the number 1 overall pick or a shot at a quarterback that Bill Belichick believes in the draft for him to take the job. Because he's not going to come into this quarterback wasteland situation, even if it is the New York Giants and how much he loves the organization. Maybe it's not. If this were 10 years ago, maybe, but it's not.
I just kind of think I feel like both teams are going to be desperate. Both teams will be desperate.
Yeah, well, they are. Yeah, 100%.
It's bad. It's bad from a fan engagement standpoint. It's bad from a sponsorship engagement standpoint. And even though it's still the most popular sport on TV, you hear it, I hear it every single day about just how putrid the football teams are here right now.